The tools a hunter uses to bring down the beasts in the Monster Hunter world are vast and varied, but none are more important than the weapon they use. I'm Darcblade, and in this series of the Monster Hunter World weapons, we're going to be taking a look at the various weapons and tools available in the game. In this episode, we're going to be bringing you an overview guide of the Charge Blade. The Charge Blade is one of the newer weapons implemented in the Monster Hunter series, and it could also be considered one of the more complex and advanced weapons. It has numerous internal functions, and for the weapon to be at the best, you need to master all of them. On the surface, it's a simple sword and shield, but you can transform it into a massive two-handed axe. However, this is not where the complexity comes in. The complexity comes in with the PHAIL system, but we'll cover that in a minute. Nonetheless though, if you are able to master this weapon's mechanics and moves, then it is incredibly satisfying, as both a DPS weapon and a tanking weapon. But anyway, let's get into the basic moves available to the Charge Blade. Now remember, for the purpose of this video, I will be quoting PlayStation controls, but you can either look down in the description below or convert them yourself if you're using a different system. First we'll talk about the weapon in its sword and shield form. The first basic move is the sword weak slash. This is done by pressing triangle. This is a fairly straightforward slash. Next is the sword charged raising slash. This is a standard upward slash, but it can be held down for increased damage. Utilizing this basic move can help charge your weapon faster. Next is the sword morph slash, which is done by pressing R2 and then triangle. This is also one of the moves that transform the Charge Blade sword and shield into the Charge Blade axe. Whilst you're in axe form though, you can simply press R2 to do the axe morph slash, which transforms the Charge Blade back to its sword and shield mode. The next basic move is the Charge PHAIL move, which is done with R2 in circle. This is a vital move, but I'll cover what it does in a moment. And then finally in sword and shield mode is the guard function, which is done with R2. Whilst holding R2 you can block monsters' attacks, reducing the damage against you. But anyway, moving on to the basic moves in axe form. First is triangle, which is the axe raise and slash. Next is the axe elemental discharge 1, which is done with pressing circle. And finally is the axed amped elemental discharge. Using this will also transform your weapon back into its sword and shield form. Now those are the basic moves, but let's get into the more advanced functions of the Charge Blade. First is the PHAIL system. This is a function you need to master to be efficient with the Charge Blade. These are indicated in the top left hand corner of your screen underneath your health, stamina and weapon sharpness. They are basically a grayed out sword and shield and then 5 what look like empty bottles. As you do damage to an enemy, the empty bottles will start to flash. First yellow, then orange, then red, then flashing red. This indicates that the weapon is charged up, and you need to store and bank that charged energy. If you fail to do so, your weapon attacks will simply start to bounce off an enemy, being ineffective. This is where the Charge PHAIL basic move, which is R2 in circle, comes in handy. Press this and you will store the energy into the weapon. This will fill up the 5 empty glasses. Once they are filled up, attacks whilst in axe form, mainly attacks with circle or triangle in circle, will consume these phials, dealing additional damage and dealing additional elemental damage to a target depending on the Charge Blade type you are using. This is where your main source of burst damage comes from. Utilizing circle whilst in axe form will simply use up 1 phial per hit, whilst using the amped elemental discharge, which is triangle and circle, will consume all of them. Afterwards you'll have to continue your assault in sword and shield form to charge the blade once more. Be warned, you can only charge these phials whilst in sword and shield form. However, once you have your phials stored and ready to use, you can use them for more than just standard DPS in axe form. First would be to amp or charge your shield up. To do this while in axe form, even if you have 1 full phial left, perform the amped elemental discharge, which is triangle and circle, but cancel out of that before the hit connects with R2 to perform an elemental round slash. This will consume the filled phials and store them into the shield, enhancing the shield's properties. This means that enemies who hit you with a charged shield will take damage. It also means you can potentially block more. However, this can then lead on to the next stage in the Charge Blade's function, which is to charge the one-handed sword, also sometimes referred to as the condensed elemental slash. This is performed in a similar manner, and it requires you to have a charged or amped shield already. As you charge your blade up again and get a new series of stored phials, perform a second Charge PHAIL move, but instead of just simply tapping it to store the charged energy, hold it. The weapon will eventually clench up while performing the charged PHAIL move. Afterwards, press triangle to perform a condensed elemental slash. This will transfer the energy into your sword, enhancing it, allowing your sword to perform more damage and even elemental damage depending on the type of charge blade you are using. You can tell your sword and shield are both charged by them glowing, also indicated in the top left hand corner underneath your health and stamina. On top of that, unlike charging or amping your shield, charging your sword will not actually consume the stored energy. One last side function is that some attacks while in sword and shield mode can result in you auto-blocking a monster's attack. But anyway, let's move away from the unique functions and talk about some of the basic combos available to the charge blade. First is the sword basic combo, which is done by pressing triangle and circle, then triangle, triangle. This is a fairly straightforward combo that pushes you towards a monster's location. Next is a sword combo that allows you to potentially boost sword mode. This is done by holding circle, then R2 and circle, and then triangle again. If you have enough files stored up, as well as a charged shield, this will also allow you to enter the enhanced sword state. And then finally is a combo that leads into an amped elemental discharge. This is done by pressing the direction and triangle, circle, then circle. For this to be at its best, you need to have files stored up. Now of course there are many other combos you can pull off with the charge blade. These are just a few very basic ones. But anyway, let's move away from basic combos to talk about the pros and cons of the charge blade. The first is it's a weapon that can adapt to many situations. Fairly quick combos, but on top of that it also gives you great defensive options, thanks to the fact that you can block enemy attacks and even tank in some respects. Whilst in axe form you're able to deal out massive damage as long as you can keep up the files in order to do so. Another positive is that it's a weapon that can be charged up and enhanced as a fight goes on, increasing the effectiveness of your one-handed sword, your shield and your two-handed axe. However, this also leads into its biggest con, which is that the weapon does require micromanagement. You have to always keep an eye on your files, how much energy your blade has charged up, as well as if your shield and one-handed sword are in an amped state. Now overall the charge blade is, like I said, a more advanced weapon. The file system is what makes and breaks the weapon. Experts and experienced Monster Hunter players are bound to love the charge blade, but they've probably had time to get used to it through other games. That being said though, even if you're new to the series, this is a weapon you might want to consider as you get more used to the game's mechanics. It is fun to use, you just have to dedicate a little bit of time to learning their inner functions. But once you do, you'll have a versatile weapon that can perform almost any duty. Like I said though, you need to master the file system as well as amping your sword and shield and knowing when to spend your stored charged files. Nonetheless though, the charge blade is one of the flashier weapons and one of the more satisfying weapons in the game once you take the time to learn it. Now remember that this first series of videos are overviews taken from the Monster Hunter World Beta. Once the full game is released, expect to have much more in-depth videos for the different weapons and tools available in the game. So I hope you found this guide helpful, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you an overview guide of the charge blade in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.